Okay, so for those of you I haven't had the joy of meeting, I'm Therese Benz, and three of my sisters, I think, are here. Yeah. So I know some of you. I haven't met all of you, but I'm so happy to be with you all here tonight. Um, so the title of this talk, as I'm sure you all knew before you came even, is Keeping the Peace, which is a pretty big topic. So I'm really going to just be focusing in on interior peace. So like the peace we find within ourselves, because that's really where all peace comes from. So, like for example, you're not going to find a family that's at peace if the people who make up that family aren't at peace. You're not going to find a country that's at peace if the people in that country aren't at peace. So even though we're kind of just talking about our own hearts, this really is something that impacts everybody that we interact with, everyone we meet, everyone we see. And it really is just so foundational to loving the Lord. Um, just one other note, peace is also super connected to a lot of other topics like joy and freedom and trust and mercy. So sometimes you're going to see the talk sort of, I think, drift off a little bit, or you're going to see those connections, but I'll try to keep it focused on peace, just so you all know. Okay, so just to give you all kind of a little roadmap for where we're headed, which might, just give you a good sense of kind of what we're doing and what to expect. I'm just going to start by talking about peace, or interior peace specifically, in general, and then we're going to talk about, is this buzzing? Okay, just so you aren't listening to blowing sounds all night. So we're just going to talk about peace in general, and then to kind of dive into the specifics of that, we're going to talk about having peace in the present moment, then also having peace regarding our past, maybe things that are behind us, and then also peace regarding the future, like what's coming, what we don't know about yet. So here we go. Okay, so I just want to start by reading you all just a couple verses from the Gospel of John. And this is from an encounter between Jesus and the disciples after he rises from the dead. So this is from John chapter 20. So John writes, "On the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being shut where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, 'Peace be with you.' When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord." Okay, so I'm going to stop at those two verses. The ones that follow are so beautiful too, but just to keep it simple, we're just going to focus in on those two. So what we see in this passage is the disciples are terrified. The day before, some women had come running in, told them they had seen Jesus. They're like, that's not possible. He was crucified. So they're scared for their lives. They think the Jews are going to crucify them too. They're terrified. But Jesus comes to them, and he says these words, "Peace be with you." And then he shows them his wounds, and it says they rejoiced and they were glad. So already you see there kind of the connection between joy and peace. But what I think is so beautiful about this is that their peace comes from encountering Jesus, from seeing who Jesus is, which then lets them know who they are. So they see Jesus' identity, which then lets them know their own identity. And this is what I mean, is that Jesus comes, he says, "Peace be with you," and he shows them his wounds. He shows them that, first of all, it is really the guy who was nailed to the cross a few days before, and that it's the man who did that out of love for them. So that they realize their identity is built on his love for them. That's why they rejoice, because they see Jesus, they see who he is, and so because they see who he is, it tells them who they are. So this is really why peace does not come and go like a feeling, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But it's this deep, abiding confidence, because peace is about your identity. It's knowing that at the foundation, who you are is determined not by what you do or what you accomplish in your life or don't accomplish, the good things you do or the bad things you do, that it's actually just totally determined by Jesus Christ's love for you. Okay, so that's kind of big overview picture of peace, but that was pretty intense. So we're going to try and break that down a little bit by looking at peace in the present, past, and future. And I'm going to tell just some little stories for each one of those to hopefully make it come alive a little bit more. So peace is something we receive. It's not something we create. It's not like, if I'm strong enough, I'll be at peace, and I'll be able to create this feeling for myself that I experience all the time. No. It's a gift. It's something that's given to us by Jesus. Okay, so this is going to be a super silly, really small example, but so tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. on Zoom, I have an oral exam for an online class I'm taking. So I'm going to be sitting there with my professor, and he's going to ask me a bunch of questions about moral theology, and I'm going to try and answer them. So, okay, I'll be honest. I feel really anxious about it. I'm like, talking is not my strong suit. It's not what I'm naturally good at. So I'm like, I could show up and just totally forget everything and fail this class, I guess. Hopefully that won't happen. But, so peace is not feeling anxious about that test or not feeling worried about it. But peace is about knowing that whether I fail that test or do amazingly on that test, that doesn't determine my identity. That when you feel that anxiety, that worry, that you turn to the Lord and you listen to him as he says to you, I love you. I died for you. I rose from the dead for you, and I want to be with you forever. So, kind of in any present moment, you can put something into perspective by listening to the Lord as he speaks that to you. That he loves you, that he died for you, that he rose from the dead for you, and that he wants you to be with him forever. And so that's why peace it has to do with your identity, with the core of who you are. Because life throws tons of stuff at us all the time. We don't know what's coming. Always, we can't prepare for every single thing. We're not going to do perfect on every test or in every sports game, or in every area of our lives. But it's just returning to him, listening to him, and this is obviously prayer would be that listening. Listening to him as he tells us who we are. Okay, so that's the present. See if we can find the past now. Okay, so the past. So, well, this is connected to the present because, the past worries us when we're thinking about the past in the present. And that's where the past can kind of creep in to sort of try and mess up our understanding of our identity or that identity that we hear from Christ. So I'm sure I know I have tons of things in my life where when I remember that I did that or that happened, I'm like, ooh, like, oh no, let's pretend that isn't real. And some of them are really big things and some of them are small. But it's so easy to let that stuff kind of come back again and again and sort of whisper to us, like, no, you're not everything that Jesus says you are. Like, you're not actually that good. So I think, so again, this is just about listening to the Lord as he tells us who we really are. So just to give you guys a little story from my own life, this is kind of a more serious story. I've only had one serious boyfriend in my whole life, and I know, I was like, if I mention my boyfriend, they'll all be like, ooh, interesting. That's how girls are. And so we were, kind of our relationship sort of carried in different forms through like my 4 years of undergrad. And so we were kind of a thing for a while, and then we dated for a few months, and then I felt this like deep clarity that like I wasn't going to marry him, this wasn't really going anywhere, so I broke up with him. And then a year and a half later, we started dating again, and I basically was like, well, I'm not really sure. Like, how can I be really sure? Like, things have changed. I don't know. Um, so I dated him a second time, broke up with him 8 months later again. So I broke up with the same guy again. Um, this is actually not very fun to share about because this is kind of like, oh look, I'm a really bad person. But it's basically like I lied to myself. I lied myself into believing that this was a good decision. Like I rationalized it. It took me like a year basically to rationalize myself into a point where I dated him again. And that actually caused me a lot of pain and it caused him a lot of pain. And so it's so easy looking back for that memory to say, you only love people for selfish reasons. You're not really capable of loving people the way Christ loves. Would you have done that if you are? No. So, you're wretched. Sorry, wretched is one of my favorite words. But no, it's saying, it's not needing to ignore the past or pretending we didn't do things we did, or sometimes it's something from our past that we didn't do that was done to us. And that also tries to steal our peace from us and say, this happened to you, you're not worth anything. You chose this, you're going to be bad, and you can never really fix that. But no, again, the solution, where peace comes from, when we feel that lack of peace, something from our past kind of rises up and is like, look at you, you're so not good. It's, again, turning to the Lord, listening to him as he tells us who we are. That we don't have to ignore our past, we don't have to pretend something's not there, but that we can totally hand it over to him in trust and mercy and say, I cannot change what happened, but right now I can hand it to you, Jesus, and listen to you again as you say to me who I am, that I'm worth dying for, and that you want me forever. So that's dealing with the past, whether it's something you chose or something you didn't choose. Whenever that seeks to steal your peace from you, it's giving it back to him. Okay, now we got to find the future. It's kind of an adventure digging through pages. Okay, so this is kind of like the last little topic, but the future. So the future is coming, and sometimes the future is scary because there's something we know is coming. So I guess like my test tomorrow, I know that's coming and it's scaring me. But also the future can be scary because of things we don't know. Like, will I ever meet someone I can marry? Will I ever find my vocation? What college am I going to go to? Am I ever going to, find a friend who is as close to me as that childhood friend? That we can have all these questions about the future, things we don't know, things we're not sure about. And that can also really undermine our peace. That can leave us really anxious, feeling really weak, feeling really worried. Okay, so again, then how do we approach peace with regard to the future? I just want to talk for a minute about someone who I think showed a lot of peace in an extraordinarily difficult situations. This is not from my own life, and I'm sure some of you know about her. Her name's Chiara Corbella. She was an Italian woman, and she passed away in 2012. And so her story is just, she was young, she got married to, her husband's name was Enrico, and they had 2 pregnancies where each of the babies had some kind of disease where they passed away very shortly after she gave birth. And that was really, really hard. And then finally, she had a pregnancy with a baby who was totally healthy, but while she was still pregnant with that baby, she found out that she had cancer. And then eventually found out that it was terminal and that she wasn't ever going to get to see this baby grow up. And so she had to trust her own future to God, but she also had to trust the future of her son and her husband, who she wouldn't be there with. She wouldn't be there with them after she passed away. Actually, her husband and son still live in Rome today. And I love her so much because there's this story about, I think either the day before she died or the morning of, her husband said to her, Chiara, is this yoke really sweet, the way Jesus says it is? Like, is this cross, this very heavy thing you have to bear, is it really sweet? Because, and she said, yes, Enrico, it is very sweet. I'm sorry, I cry every time I think about her. And I think that's the response to Jesus. not to Jesus. That's the response that Jesus enables us to say when we hand our future over to him. That we take our crosses, those things that are coming at us that we're worried about, or all of the unknown, that we hand it to him, and even those worries make us free. Even those worries draw us closer to him. Even those worries are sweet. And this is why St. Paul says in the letter to the Romans, and this is another passage that I love, he says, neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor heights, nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation can separate us from the love of Jesus Christ. That it depends on Jesus, not on us, on his identity, who he is, the one who died for us. It depends on that, and not on what we do or what we're able to accomplish. Okay, so just a couple concluding points. There's a lot more to be said about peace as a way of discerning things, or how to stay at peace when you're trying to love other people. But I really just want to close by saying that Jesus, all of our questions, all of our worries, all of our anxieties, Jesus answers them, not always by making them disappear, not always by kind of fixing them with a snap of his fingers, but he answers them by giving us his very self. That's the answer he gives to us, is himself. And that's why peace is an identity, not a feeling. It's us being united to him. That's what it is. So just one more line from Paul. Paul is so good at so many things. The Bible's great. So just kind of one final line from him. He says, rejoice in the Lord always. Okay, and I also want to say before I say this, these words are to you. So the words in the Bible, they're not just written to the Philippians, a couple thousand years ago. Paul wrote these words through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit for you tonight. So listen. Okay, here we go. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice. Let all men know your forbearance. The Lord is at hand. Have no anxiety about anything, no. But in everything by prayer and supplication, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. All right, God bless you all. Love you all a lot. Thanks for listening.